This is Canadian Cycling Magazine. We're here with Nicole LaViolette and Craig Forcese, the authors of Every Cyclist's Guide to Canadian Law. And we're going to talk about their new book, but first we're going to talk a bit about their backgrounds in law and in cycling. So, Nicole, what is your background in law?
In law, I'm mostly actually an international lawyer, so I've been teaching international law and refugee issues at the University of Ottawa for years. So that's generally my background. So this is actually a new venture for me to be talking about bicycles in the law.
And Craig?
Very similar. I'm a professor at the University of Ottawa after a few years in private practice. I don't teach cycling in the law. I teach a number of subjects that are perhaps even more obscure. But as a recreational cyclist and as a competitive triathlete, I thought this was a wonderful area in which to start doing some serious writing.
So you guys are both cyclists. On the back of your book, you're both striking a TT pose. Tell us a bit about the kind of cycling you do, Nicole.
Well, it was a little bit by chance that I got into cycling. I used to be a runner and I had an injury, so I took up cycling as a way to recover from an injury, discovered that I loved it, and started to get into more serious training. And I love time trialing, so that was my main thing. But I do, trail riding, I do traveling on the bike, commuting, I do just about everything.
Now, what inspired this book? Why did you guys decide to write a book about cycling in the law?
Well, I think like many cyclists over the years, we've encountered all sorts of interpretations and misinterpretations of the law from fellow cyclists, drivers, even police officers, and we thought it might be worthwhile to sit down and in one place archive the sum total of issues that really pertain to cycling. And so, yes, we deal with things like traffic safety and road rules, but more than that, we deal with everything that cyclists might encounter over the course of their cycling career. Everything from purchasing a bike and warranty issues around bicycles, to losing your bike through theft, through to more competitive cycling issues such as doping and the rules that surround cycling competition.
It's definitely comprehensive, and it does cover a lot of areas. You also mention in your book that one of the inspirations was an American book, Bicycling and the Law. And so you're familiar with a bit of the laws south of the border. Are there any laws down there that maybe we should import up here in Canada?
There's one that we mention, the Idaho stop, and actually Craig knows a bit more about that one, how it applies and how maybe it would be a good idea to have up here.
Well, basically in the state of Idaho, what they've done is they've converted for cyclists stop signs into yield signs and red lights into stop signs in terms of the way that a cyclist approaches each of these traffic signals. That has the virtue of allowing a cyclist to maintain momentum through a stop sign, which in practice is what a lot of cyclists do because they disregard stop signs or they treat them as yield signs. The issue is whether it's effective from a traffic safety perspective, whether it's effective or not, and so that becomes an empirical question. One of the things that we looked at in the book is the very limited number of studies out there that try to trace accident rates in Idaho where they do apply this traffic rule, and there is some evidence, although incomplete evidence and partial evidence, that at least in Idaho that these rules actually reduce the number of traffic incidents involving collisions between cars and cyclists. The one caveat to that is that Idaho, relatively speaking, is in terms of its population density, it's not downtown Toronto, and so I think it's an area that requires further research. In principle, I can see why it might be quite effective because, of course, as cyclists, we all know that coming to a stop is when you're the most likely to tumble or find the bike the most unstable, and so your maneuverability is reduced, and in that circumstance, your ability to avoid a collision is minimized. And you can imagine carrying a little bit of momentum so long as you pass through the intersection in a traffic-free zone, you look to the right, look to the left. Carrying a bit of momentum might be to your advantage.
That's interesting that it also has a safety element to it, not just a conservation of a momentum and a speed element that maybe is what's going through most cyclists' mind at a stop sign. You also sort of touch on an idea that there is a difference between cars and bikes, which we all know, but sometimes it seems the law doesn't recognize those differences. Is that something else that could be addressed in Canadian law, or that maybe is something that needs to be looked at further?
We found that there was quite a range because, of course, most of this is done provincially and territorially, and there was a real difference between how the provinces approach regulating bicycles. So in Saskatchewan, you will find no definition or mention of bicycles in their traffic safety laws, whereas in other provinces, they would be very specific about the kind of conduct a cyclist must have as opposed to a motorist. So there's certainly no consistency across the provinces, across the jurisdictions. So that was a bit surprising, and maybe there's some work to do to be a bit more standard about how we approach cycling as a particular vehicle, as opposed to either throwing it into motorist or treating it so separately that it doesn't fit in very well in the rest of the vehicles.
What example of that, incidentally, is whether the rules address cyclists passing on the right. And so, of course, in a conventional motor vehicle context, except on a two-lane road, you're not entitled to pass on the right. Many cyclists, of course, do travel up the right in a column of traffic to get to a stop light or stop sign. In principle, that's illegal in Ontario, but there are maritime provinces where it's quite specific that you are allowed as a cyclist to pass on your right. So there actually is a fairly remarkable variance between provinces in terms of the rules that apply.
Now, of the rules you've looked at, are there any that struck you as particularly quirky or strange?
Craig has a favorite in Ontario.
Well, of course, in Ontario law, you're obliged as a cyclist to have, as everyone knows, a bell on your bike, but the Act actually says bell, horn, or if you read it fully, you're entitled to use a gong on your bike. I've never seen that. I'm not sure you can buy one on eBay, but it's worth investigating.
Maybe it's something for the gear developers to look into, the new bike gong. You also reference in your book a Kids in the Hall skit, and you run with this a little bit in the book. It's a skit where Bruce McCullough laments his front wheel getting stolen, and then you guys get into a segment in the book called The Scale and Scope of Jerkiness, like the theft of a front wheel. Have you been the victims of jerkiness?
Absolutely, and I think we really wanted to convey that feeling we've all had when we come to get our bike. We've parked it somewhere in the city and it's been stripped, or the wheels have gone, or in my case, I mean, I've had wheels taken off, I've had the shoe horns taken off on the handlebars, I've lost just about everything except that bell that I wouldn't mind disappearing, but I've had just about everything done, and it does feel like, damn, what jerk would spend time doing this?
Yeah, it's a total jerk move. And, you know, if you lose the bell, then you could get a gong. So that could always happen. Who is this book for, and how should they use it?
Well, we think it's for every cyclist, and that's why we chose that as our title. But we think it goes beyond the cyclists. We think it's coaches, it's club administrators, it's law enforcement officers who need to be informed, it's personal injury lawyers, insurance lawyers. So we really tried to make it as accessible to a wide range of people who encounter cycling or engage in cycling as possible.
That's great. The book is called Every Cyclist's Guide to Canadian Law, and it's available now. Nicole, Craig, thank you very much.
Thanks very much.